get a chance to talk about someone who has been in this community for a long time and who probably is that person who doesn't need an introduction, but I'll spend at least 10 minutes introducing him. So, first of all, Fred's worked for the Gold Moraine Foundation for over 30 years prior to retiring in about 2004, I believe, 2003. And he's lived in Legion World and Regional 15 for the last 15 years approximately. He's one of the original honorary members of the Historical Society. But it's probably his best claim to fame as far as the Historical Society is that he is the godfather of the Historical Society. And he got this wonderful title by, first of all, he was the guide to Doctors Ken and Claire Walker, who started the Historical Society. And they came to him with this idea, and he fortunately gave them the opportunity to do it. And then it was that because he'd been saving things over a number of years, which were historically important to the community. We have over 250 pieces of Legion World china. Fred had saved 50 pieces, about 50 pieces of the original china, and that started our collection. And then we got a great deal of china in the first few years. Now we keep receiving a few pieces every now and then. In fact, all Fred had was a broken up cup, which had been glued back together. But we now have, it took us almost 12 years to get the next cup, and then we found 2 more cups. So now we have actually 3 cups. Well, we have 4 cups if you count this cup. but it's over on display in Clubhouse 2. And you can see someone had broken it and it's moved it all back together. Fred had saved the archives from a former historical society, which we have on file here in the museum. Speaking of the museum, he was the inspiration, I think, for us getting the museum. I remember that I was somewhat new in the community at the time, and I was vice president of the Historical Society, and Dr. Walker, who was on a vacation, was the president, and all of a sudden I got called into a committee meeting of the Recreation Committee to ask for the use of the room, which used to be the physical fitness room. In fact, that was started, and that was all the room we ever needed for physical fitness. Yeah. And you can see that it has grown a little bit since then, but I didn't realize what a slam dunk that room probably was thanks to Fred, but I was extremely nervous that day at the Recreation Committee trying to ask for the room. Had I known how things work, I wouldn't have been nearly as worried about it. And Fred is also famous for his emceeing of the amphitheater shows, and we have a large collection of his tapes. And I just put a few out there to give you a general idea of the type of people he interviewed when they were coming here. In those days, we had a lot more stars from the 30s, 40s, and 50s who were still actively doing. Now there's very few of those even living anymore, and those who have pretty much retired. But anyway, that gives you an idea of how Fred relates to our community, and now I'm going to let Fred tell you about his years with the community.
Thank you very much. And I don't think I would do enough. You know, you were talking about doing one with the amphitheater. It's hard for me to be honest, it's hard for me to remember 40 years ago what happened. Probably tomorrow I'll remember a lot more. But anyway, we put a few things together. I came here in February of 1971. And promptly a week later got the flu so bad I was out for a little over a week. And the administrator was kind enough to take me back. During the time we were here, I was interviewed with 4 other fellows, and I had come out of Vandenberg up north, and I used to put together different kind of material for the Air Force. And what they were looking for when I came here originally was to put together policy. We had no policies when I came. And if I would write a policy, it would then go to the administrator who was, he had a law degree. 15 years of my life here. And he would go over them. Then it would go to committee. And the committee then would read them over, and if they disagreed with it, they would change it. Then it would go to the board. So it went through a lot of hands. I didn't write all the policies. They were rewritten many times. And since then, they've been rewritten. One time I was out having lunch, and a fellow sat down. I didn't know. We introduced each other, and I was, I was about 34 years old, this kid. And this older man, he said, well, he was president of Belmont Savings and Loan. They had one, you remember those? Do you remember? Yeah. He had one branch down in Belmont Shore, and later he had another branch up here, the big two-story building on the other end of the shopping center was his. But he said to me one thing I had never forgotten. Cortese was the developer here. He was not liked well. He pulled a few things that he didn't like. Anyway, this gentleman said to me, it doesn't matter how bad folks disagree with this fellow. Just remember one thing. He said, drive through and look around. He said, he left something for you. So I thought that was kind of neat. Sorry, I get a little choked up when I think of some of these old things. But Cortese used to have the board was picked by him. They were not voted on at the time. And they had their meetings over in Clubhouse 2. And how it ended up was he had armed guards come in and wouldn't let anybody in. So then they got upset, and there was a group in here called, I think it was a senior citizen something. Anyway, they were the people who didn't like him, and they eventually got him out. The president at the time went back to FHA, flew back, all on his own. He paid for everything. Went back to FHA, found out who he had to talk to and how to get Cortese out of here permanently, because this was a 40-year mortgage with FHA. And they had complete control, really. So anyway, they got him out, and of course he was building, but he built Walnut Creek, and he built one in New Jersey, two in New Jersey later, and then of course down south, he had the big one down there. One of the policies I had to deal with in the beginning that upset a lot of people was that, couldn't tell you the number now, but it's still in, I think it's still there, that there could be no outsider that didn't live here be an officer in a club. And we had a lot of clubs that had outside people who were officers of the clubs. So anyway, they had to purge the clubs. President at the time of Bemis, Curly Bemis, and he wrote that policy. He was very adamant about getting the outsiders out. They could belong to the club, but they could not hold an office. And listen, if you have a question a lecture type thing, I've lectured enough, and plus I don't have a lot, like I said, 20 minutes, long time. We'll go on here. While I've been here, we've had Governor Reagan come. At the time, he was stumping for, if you recall, some of you may recall, he wanted all of the beaches in California open to the public. Well, places like Malibu and up in there where those people pay a lot of money, they didn't want people running around there. So that's why he was here. He came to speak, and of course he came later running for president. We had a very strong Republican Party here, and later had a very strong Democratic Party here. But sound. And he kept talking about Dutch Reagan, this and that. I always thought, Ray drank too much, but he didn't. Out of the whole group, Reagan walked in and he said, Ray Stauffer, I about died. He went on about how they lived together, what they used to do when he was on the radio. That's when he and Ray lived together in 1938. And then Ray went into service. Then we've had Barbara Bush here, of course, lovely lady. We had a fellow by the name of Alan Cranston. You remember him? Alan? And it was sad because, like I said, it was very strong Republican. And they decided to put him in the amphitheater, and only about 200 people showed up, and he was really upset. He didn't like that at all. Well, it was embarrassing to him and me too. But the Democratic Party had that. I didn't have it then. We had a policy also on anybody working for Golden Rain could not sign for anything. And here is why. We had a gentleman, if I can find his name here. Humphrey. Humphrey came here, and the fellow just before me had signed for all of the telephones. They brought in a whole bank of telephones, brought in typewriters, rented the typewriters. They brought a whole lot of stuff in, sweets and things like that. Anyway, he signed for everything, and Golden Rain ended up paying for it. But from then on, the policy said, you let the Democratic Party, Republican Party do their thing. We'll help them any way we can. So that's how we have that still in effect. I think it's been eight long years. I can't believe it. Then Clubhouse 4. The library used to be on the outside of the world. It belonged to the county. It was the county library. And where Clubhouse 4 is now, and up against the freeway, they were going to put an overpass in there someday. I don't know how. So they took out 2 buildings over in that mutual, and then they decided they wouldn't put it in. So they gave the land to the county. The county looked at it and said, what are we going to do with it? It was landlocked. They couldn't do anything with it, so they offered it to Leisure World. That's how we got that. And then they appointed a committee to find out what they wanted to do with the land. Well, the committee decided that they wanted a theater of some kind. And the board said, no, we want a board where we have board meetings. And it ended up like it is now. Of course, it upset all the people that were appointed to the ad hoc committee for that. They were going to modify Club 3. How am I running out of time?
You're doing fine.
Am I?
Yeah.
Well, let's
You
close.
got probably an hour and a half left.
And I was worried about playing. Well, anyway, how you got started, the society. A lady called me one day. I'd only been here maybe a year, and she said, I have all of the newspapers from number 1 on. And I said, let me think about that. So I went over and I talked to the administrator. I said, you know what? I hate to lose all of this information. He said, go get it. So he authorized me to get, in fact, I think he still uses those big metal cabinets back there. Authorized me to get those cabinets and put, my office at the time was up in the top of the amphitheater. And so we put those back there. And I kept, like the Colonel said, I used to keep everything that came into lost and found that no one came to claim. And it belonged to Leisure World, not everything, you know what I mean. And so we kept all of that, and Ken Walker came in one day, and he said, you know, I'd like to do this, and I'd like to start historical. Has anybody thought about that? And I said, no, and I'm glad to know you very much. And he started there, then I met Mrs. Walker. And he used to sit in that. They went through so much stuff. By this time, the clubs started disbanding, a lot of them. There were all kinds of different clubs in here in the beginning. But they would bring their scrapbooks up, and we kept the scrapbooks. Do you still have those?
Yes, we do.
There? So I didn't know if anybody wanted them or not, so Dr. Walker looked them all over, and he said, well, we'll look through them. So he took over from there, and I was happy because, what a gentleman. He was so great. Also in here, we had, I remember having, I don't know if anybody remembers Westy Westerman, you might. We had his 100th birthday here. World War I gentleman. And he was telling us one time that he played cards with Eisenhower. They played bridge down in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And I went up to marry Mamie, so Westy had to leave. And he was a lieutenant, and his folks had money, so his pay didn't mean anything. And he was another gentleman that I enjoyed. We had one fellow that was Ray Ragland, was a fighter pilot in World War I, and they got a hold of him to help make the movie Rick Goffin and Brown. I don't know if anyone has seen that, but it was about Rick Goffin, the famous German fighter pilot, and Ray said he never went up against him. He said he probably would have lost, but anyway, I thought that was interesting. And then we had a lady in here that drove ambulances in World War I. She had two of her best friends, Roseburg. I don't know if anybody remembers her, but then when World War II came along, she volunteered again, and her two friends showed up, same three. I thought that was amazing, amazing. Then we had George Murphy come in one time, and he was going to speak for somebody. And they asked me, the Republican Party asked me to interview him. I said, sure, I'll talk to him. Then they found out I was registered independent, always had been, because I wasn't going to be a Democrat or Republican in this place. They could have hung me. And so anyway, I remember Miss Republican said, well, we can't use you because you're not Republican. So I said, okay, that's fine. So they got somebody else to do it. And I'd met Murphy one other time up in Santa Maria when I lived up there. I hope we're close.
We're close, yes.
Okay. The thing that Jack Davis, my first administrator, used to impress upon all department heads was that we're here, we only have one product, service. He said, whatever you do, serve the folks. That's why we're here. And so that was my philosophy all the time. If there was a bend anywhere, I've been, or the resident. If it was in policy, it had to go back and change. Nobody could break policy. Not supposed to be. Well, that's about all I got.
I have one question for you. Something we're working on right now, and that is, how did the mini farmers get started? Was that during your time? I know they were out on Seal Beach Boulevard originally, but
That was my time. Yeah, they were here in 17 for a while.
okay.
And then when they rearranged Club 4, when the county gave us that property, sold it to us, gave it to us, whatever, they decided to put them out there. which brings up something else. When we built Clubhouse 4, I went to all of the clubs that had small areas. I remember that the lapidary originated underneath the amphitheater, in one of those rooms underneath there. They were in that room for a while, right there. Yeah. And so, on that, and the committee talked about it, and that's how, but all of the clubs were asked to put it in writing what they would like to have. Not that the Golden Rain guaranteed anything, but they were going to try to take care of everybody. And they did a pretty good job. We didn't have too many complaints that day. Anything else?
Anything else?
Anything from, yes?
Were you involved in the Mutual 17 formation?
I was not directly involved. At the time, I had the janitors were underneath me. So after the prints were all done, I got to look them over, and I changed some things because there were no janitorial things that, like plugs in the hallways and things like that, where they were going to have it for vacuums. And but no, that was all done by the board. The board did that.
What's the storyline of how it developed versus the rest of the Leisure World that was shares and stuff like that?
Well, that, of course, the area in 17 was held by Hillman. And they pumped oil there for a long time. There's a lot of oil underneath us. We ought to think about them. No. Anyway, they pumped oil there, and finally they gave that up. They slant drilled. And over where the big parking lot, where the trailer park is, they pumped oil there for a long time, after we were here. But then they gave that up, and we bought the property. And were you involved in it?
No.
You were not here?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes?
Fred, you had quite a system on traveling and buses and so forth. Was that under your jurisdiction, or was that a private?
Under travel? There was a couple of things that happened. When I came here, there was a young lady that was under recreation. She used to come here, and they do day trips out of here. Then they decided, you know where my office was at the top of the amphitheater? Well, that became a travel agency, and that was an outsider. Well, they absconded with a lot of money. They took money in and they disappeared one time. So that's why, in fact, I moved to that office. My office used to be in Clubhouse 3, room 10. And there for a long time. But the fellow before me used to go play pool all day long. And the administrator didn't care for that, so wanted to get rid of him. That was a good thing. Yes, ma'am.
Did we buy the oil and mineral rights when we
No.
purchased the property?
No.
No?
You
Why not?
can't buy those anymore. You just can't, they don't get rid of them. If there's a way home, you can. Okay, thank you very much.
That you mentioned Wesley Westerman.
Yes.
And in the museum this used to be the largest World War I group in the United States at one point, and there was a huge display in Clubhouse 2, and we have it now in the museum towards the back, and it has all the names of all the people who were here, an amazing number of people. When you think about it, it was 1962 when those people were getting it out for 40 years out of World War I, so they were getting ready for retirement. And there was a huge committee, and there's a book about them, which is an extra from Wesley's family gave to us. But I remember Wesley Westerman well, I didn't know him very long, he died, or sure that he came here, but we were members of the Geographic Society. He was a tall, thin man, and one night we walked in, and here is this man, 100 years old, standing on a chair like this, adjusting the drapes. I mean, that's the kind of person he was. He was 100 years old, it didn't bother him at all, he might fall off a rickety chair, but there he was, the drapes weren't like he liked them, because there was some light from outside hitting on the screen. He got up there and started adjusting himself. 15 people walked over to help him get down. But that's what I remember. But anyway, Fred, I want to thank you very, very much. And since you drink a little coffee, we wanted you to have a Historical Society cup. I think you have one of the original ones. But this one is newer. It has on both sides. So people now know what you're drinking from. But
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
And then I want to take a minute and Marie Antros is here from the Seal Beach Historical Society. She's president, and they're having an event coming up this weekend. And I wondered, she said I could announce it, but I said it'd be much better if she announced it herself. So Marie, here you are.
Thank you. We're going to have Kay Petticoat's going to be coming down and talking to us at our society at Mary Wilson Library at 3 o'clock on Sunday the 29th. And we're also going to celebrate her 100th birthday. So if anybody would like to come, we'd be happy to have you. Just let me know before I go, and I'll just add you to our list. Thank you.
For any of you who don't know Seal Beach that well, the Marie Wilson Library is downtown, next to the Red Car Museum, which is on the old Pacific Electric right-of-way. And you can, in the Marie Wilson Library is a community room where the Historical Society meets. So you're all certainly invited to come down and look forward to doing so. Let Marie know if you can make it. I want to thank Gene and Dorcas and Chuck Burnett for the work they did today, getting the food set up and Chuck doing the video. And I want to thank again Fred very, very much for coming in. It's great to have you here. I'm glad we got a chance to remember some of the things that happened. And maybe we'll try and get you back again for a different program later on.
If I'm still alive.
If you're still alive. Well, you outlived everybody else, so it's great home for it. There's always Wesley as an example. And then I want to mention that our next program is the ice cream social, and that will be presentation. The ice cream social will give following the Italian American Club's presentation. The Italian American Club is one of the older clubs in Leisure World, and we have a number of their scrapbooks. I was amazed how many years it goes back. We'll have all the scrapbooks on display, and as Fred said, one of the things we've done is we've kept all the old scrapbooks. We also have a box. We have about 75 clubs records here. Sometimes we only have 2 or 3 things from a club. Some in the case of the Garden Club, they've got 4 or 5 boxes of their records. So it's there, and if you ever want to see it, it's in the museum. We're certainly happy to show it. Also over here on the table is the signing up for the highlights. If you don't get a copy of the highlights and you'd like to, there's also copies of the highlights to take. And then the editor of the highlights made a tactical error. He put the questions in on page 3 and didn't put the answers on page 4. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but he must have been very hurried. But on the table are the answers and the questions from the highlights. So you can get them and you can find out which club had to be divided in half because they got too big. Thank you all very much for coming.